Breakfast with Louise Holland.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
Now, this morning we're hearing from people who can help us get our mind and souls on the road to recovery after the last 12 months. We may have still some way to go yet, but it is important to take a moment and acknowledge what we've been through so far. Holly Matthews is a life coach and our happiness guru. She's always such a hit when she comes on the programme. So we asked her to do some reflections for us this morning. She did them from home for obvious reasons. And I asked her how we should be feeling today.
There are no shoulds as to how you are feeling right now. We are all individuals and we have all navigated this global pandemic in our own way. And if you are feeling a bit battered and bruised and fatigued, and perhaps you are lacking in some confidence right now in yourself and the world, perhaps you are feeling anxious, maybe you are experiencing some health anxiety, all of these things are perfectly normal. They're perfectly normal for a human being to be feeling when we have gone through what we have gone through, and whatever it has and however it has manifested in your own world, you have been impacted by this. And so it's acknowledging that and allowing yourself space to start from where you are right now and take baby steps towards feeling and bringing in more joy into your lives. And that's all we can do. The kindness towards ourselves. There are no shoulds in any of this. There are no definitive answers. It is certainly not one size fits all. Everybody should behave in a certain way. Just do the best that you can.
10 to 8 on Sunday, the 21st of March. And this morning we're hearing from people who can help us get our mind and souls on the road to recovery after the last 12 months as we look at the anniversary of lockdown. We may still have some way to go yet, but it is important, we think, to take a moment to acknowledge what we've been through so far. So we're hearing this morning from Holly Matthews, who's a life coach and a happiness guru. And many of us will have lost someone this last year to COVID or not, and some will be mourning the loss of normality. So Holly, who lost her own husband 3 years ago at the age of 35, has some pretty profound thoughts on grief and loss.
Over the last year, we have all collectively grieved a time that we expected to be different, a year that we thought we were going to have but didn't. Some of you have lost family members to COVID and to other things during a global pandemic, which has been extremely difficult. Funerals have been different. Being around those that are dying has been different. And so grief has come up in a huge way for people. As a widow and as somebody who has had big loss in my life, my thoughts on grief are this. Grief doesn't come in the stages of grief like we think it should, like we get told it will. Grief is not a linear process. Grief and dealing with a change in our lives that we didn't ask for is something that will be a constant learning process for us. My belief in pain of any kind, but more specifically grief and loss and trauma, is if you imagine you have this pain, let's use your fist as the pain, your fist, this big lump of pain or trauma that you're carrying around with us. Our job is not to fight that pain and deny its existence or say, well, I didn't want it. I want my year back. I want the year back. I want the person back. Our job is not to do that because it's a fruitless exercise and it will just cause us more pain to do that. Our job is to build our life around the painful thing. So big, so full of joy, so exciting and wonderful and amazing that the painful thing doesn't seem as big. And it might still come up for us at points. Of course it will. We will still acknowledge and nod and think about our people, and it will sometimes still cause us pain. But the more joy we can bring into our worlds, the less that pain will sting. And I'm sending so much love to you all. A book that I would really recommend that has just been launched this week is We All Know How This Ends by Anna Lyons and Louise Winter. It's a book about death and lessons about life and living from working with death and dying. And I've just started reading it. It's really useful in acknowledging all of the things around grief and loss.
Good morning, 27 minutes past 9, Louise here on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. This morning we're hearing from people who can help us get our mind and souls somewhat on the road to recovery after the last 12 months. We know we've got some way to go yet, but we feel it's important today to take a moment to acknowledge what we've all been through so far. So we've been hearing from Holly Matthews, a life coach, and I refer to her as our happiness guru. She's got some reflections for us this morning. And I asked her to answer this question for us, because luckily for us, she can do it all from home. And she said, I asked her, considering we're expecting the country to open up again on June the 21st, some people could be quite anxious about life being a whirlwind again. So how can we prepare to take those cautious steps back to normality?
As we step out into the world once more, for some of you, it might be quite anxiety driven for you. So the first step is to take the pressure off yourself to go full steam ahead into doing everything just because the green light has been given. It took us a year to adapt to the restrictions, and it might take some of you the same amount of time to unlearn it all. So introduce things gradually, being aware of things that are highly triggering for you, things that you find more difficult, scheduling, preparing for things, being completely fine with doing that, and remembering just because others are doing something doesn't mean that you have. When you feel anxious, practicing 4-7-8 breathing. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out slowly for 8. Practicing a grounding technique in bringing yourself into the current moment. Anxiety is always about the worry about the next step, the future, what could happen. So bring yourself into this moment right now. Name 3 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel in this moment, noticing any smells or any tastes that you might have as well. And this will bring you and help to bring you into this current moment, being mindful of where you are. Give yourself a break. You don't have to let all of the noise in at once.
Time for a few more words now from Holly Matthews, our life coach and happiness guru. Now, if you don't know, Holly's been on the show several times. She's just fantastic. She used to be an actress and singer. But when her husband, Ross, was diagnosed with an incurable brain tumour, and when things got quite serious with his health, she obviously had to stop doing that because she needed to be at home with him and her young girls, couldn't travel, didn't want to be away from home. And she really tapped into something within herself during that period, this strength that she knew she would need once she lost Ross. And she became a life coach and managed to channel the grief and the sadness that she had after knowing Ross's ultimate diagnosis and Ross's eventual passing a couple of years ago. And she channeled it to become the person that she wanted and needed to support her when he was dying, and that person wasn't there. So she thought, well, I'll become it. So as a young widow at 35 with 2 little girls under 7, she really knows a thing or two about healing. So of course I asked her, considering what we've been through as a world over the last 12 months, how can we begin to heal?
Oh, it's so important to acknowledge that we must heal from this. This has been a trauma for us as a human species. And so acknowledging how hard it has been, practicing compassion towards ourselves and other people, even if those people have different opinions to us or have dealt with this in a way that we didn't. Be kind enough to acknowledge that, acknowledge what has come up for you. Lots of things have changed for many people, and we've been forced to confront things in our lives and deal with things at a really quick pace, something that we would never have to do in our normal lives. But now is the time for us to put our hands back on the steering wheel and decide how we would like this next stage to look. What we would like our lives to look like going forward with all of the lessons that we've had. Kindness and accepting your feelings right now as you are in this moment is essential to us healing. Your feelings are important and valid, and we shouldn't minimize them. Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any other questions that you want to ask me, or an area that you wish that I had delved into a little bit more, please come and hang out with me across social media. You will find me by typing Holly Matthews into the internet. IamHollyMatthews.com is my website. And I have a podcast, the Happy Me Project podcast, a Facebook group, the Happy Me Project Facebook group, where you can come and hang out with me, ask questions. I go live. I'm an open book. Come and hang out with me, and I will speak to you all very soon.
And of course, if you're wondering about Holly's acting career, yes, it did start, of course, in Byker Grove.